let's get it. I think we should just get into this right now. We're talking contracts
Yeah.
already. Because not only do you have Pettersson and Hughes coming up this year, both of which are, I believe, protected. I don't believe you can go to arbitration with either of those
No,
players.
and
I
you
know
wouldn't. You'd be
Hughes for
signing them
sure.
to long-term deals anyway.
For sure. But at least that's out of the equation. The
Yeah.
same can be said for Thatcher Demko. He has arbitration rights. He's an
And he's
RFA.
building a case.
He is building a fantastic case to
Yeah.
get a good pay raise here. And I guess my question for you is, what do you see is the comparable for Demko? 'Cause I have my thoughts on what we're looking at here. What's the comparable contract do you think for Demko, and what do you think it's going to cost to bring him back, to get him under contract next year?
I think you're starting at $4.5 million.
You're starting at 4. Okay.
I mean,
I'm
like
fascinated
obviously,
by
if I'm Jim Benning, I'm lowballing him as much as possible, and I'm going, 2.58 million is the start where we start for 3 million or for 3 years or something. Like you lowball the shit out of him because like you have to. You can't afford Pettersson, Hughes, and Demko on like big money deals all at the same time, or you're screwed, right? So I think he's going to command a lot of money, though, just because I feel like the third deal that Benning always signs, or the second deal that he signs, is always really bad. Like, do you remember when Eric Goodbranson was brought over and they were like, okay, here's an extension that'll take away his last RFA, no rights years. And it was like one at, I don't know, 3.5 or whatever. It was nothing. And then the second year they were like, then during that year, they were like, it's a prove it year. So he's got to prove he can play for when we extend him. And he played like shit the entire season.
Got injured a whole lot.
And then they were like, okay, we're going to extend him to a $4 million contract. And it was like, what guy are you evaluating? So I'm worried.
Yeah, like, what are you seeing? Like,
yeah. And so I'm worried that Demko, because of the year he's putting on, like if he keeps putting on 950 plus goaltending and carries the team to playoffs, exactly like Jacob Markstrom did, this kid's case is just going to be like blowing up, especially when the owner tweets every single game, wow, goaltending really carried us there, guys. Like, you know what I mean?
Oh, no.
He's going to command a lot more money than I think people are willing to spend on a goalie at his age right now. But you cannot argue with the case he's built for himself at all.
Absolutely not. Like, that 4 sounds crazy because he's an RFA, because he's like you mentioned Goodbranson, the big difference here is that Demko is good. Demko is playing fantastic hockey.
The opposite of Goodbranson.
Like if this is his prove it year, he's done it. He's absolutely doing it.
Yeah.
And I do think you're right. Like, I think what's really going to hurt them, and right here is the fact that Holtby's here in terms of that contract. Not because, again, I think Holtby's all right. I think Holtby's all right as a goalie. But I think it's very easy for Demko and his agent to go, hey, look, you're paying 4.3 to a guy who's only playing who's at this point is only playing once every 2 weeks, maybe, if that right now. And our number better start at 4.4, right? Just because of that's how much the other guy is getting, who is very clearly the backup right now. And I think that's going to hurt them a little bit. But with the RFA, you throw in the RFA aspect into it. I don't know what his qualifying number is right now. I believe it's just whatever the last contract is, his qualifying number would be.
Yeah, so for Hughes, for example, if your last year's base salary is $6 million, that's your base negotiating point. So like for Besser, when his contract comes up in 3 years or 2 years or whatever, his base negotiating point is like 7.735.
Yeah. So Demko's is only 1.2. It's manageable. It's more than it is, right? It's more than his technical cap hit is, but it's 1.2 is very easy to navigate around. Even with arbitration factored in. I don't know how much technically the arbitration people can award. I don't know if there's a specific cap number or percentage that they can go to from the previous year.
they look at comparables, but it's like I think they take your last year's salary and multiply it by like 1.175 or something like that for like the
Something,
base
yeah.
negotiating dollar. I think
Like you're never like, yeah, because I know we're never gonna see a case like, well, this guy's playing better than Sergei Bobrovsky, so
they would never
he
do
gets
that.
10 million.
Yeah,
Here's a $10 million contract
exactly.
for you, yeah, right out of the gate. But I mean, there are a lot of goaltenders who are theoretically getting paid a lot more than what Demko is making right now, that he is playing better than. And it's going to affect the Canucks negotiation-wise, I think, a little bit. Just the fact that he has been so good, that he will very likely get whatever is the max amount he can get in theory. He will probably get it. Just because, like, they're not just because he deserves it, but just because there's no way anyone is going to award him less than clear, obvious double value, right? Like,
like
in terms of what
he getting paid, basically.
Yeah, the only way he's going to get paid outrageously is if the Canucks decide to pay him outrageously right now, which is possible. But I mean, right now, as far as the Canucks are concerned, I mean, it's seeming like they're gonna. I wouldn't be surprised if Demko's camp tries to go for something similar to what Markstrom got in Calgary. I wouldn't be surprised if they went they looked for that. I'm not saying that's what he'll sign for.
Yeah, but that's what you would do if you were Demko. Like, you'd be like, look at the workload that I faced and what I provided.
I mean, obviously, agent's going to go for, like, again, hey, look at Sergei Bobrovsky. Give us $10 million. They're going to go for that, but in realistic stance, I do think I think it's is going to come into that ballpark of 3 to 5 million, somewhere around there. Years term, it's probably going to take him to, I don't know if it'll get him to UFA. That's the interesting thing, is will it get him to UFA status? I would say they're going to swing. I would say they might swing for, say, a higher cap hit just to keep him closer from hitting from UFA right away and then going back to give him the big bucks again.
Right.
Possibly. I wouldn't be surprised if they went in that direction, because I mean, they're already looking at bridges for Pettersson and Hughes, because they can't really afford to not give them bridges right now. I mean, that's I do think you're going to see something closer to, and this is based on no insider info, obviously. I just think it's pretty clear that A, he's been such a big part of this team, and B, just what he could command in terms of his cap and his contract situation. I think it'll be a closer to that, that 3 to 5, maybe
I don't
6,
think he pushes past 6. Or sorry,
that's what he's gonna go for, but it's gonna come down to closer to 3 to 5.
Rick Dhaliwal is gonna do all that he can in the offseason to pitch how Demko's camp is gonna want 6 million. Canucks Twitter is gonna go nuts when they hear it, and then he's gonna sign for like a 4.475, and everyone's gonna be like, "Oh, okay, that's fine. It's not 6."
I mean, if he got 6, personally, if he got 6 million, I would be like, yeah, that's good. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, I'd be like, yeah, sure. Like the Holtby contract is what makes it concerning, because you don't want $10 million invested to goaltending alone, especially in a situation where you're looking at a flat cap. But if Holtby got plucked by Seattle, or say you moved him to make room for DiPietro, which I think will happen by at least next trade deadline.
Not if he's not playing.
Oh, I mean, it's after that's 1 year anyway. After this is 1 more year.
Yeah, but they're not going to move. They're not going to move Holtby or go out of their way to move Holtby if they haven't even seen DiPietro play a real game in 2 years.
That's the question.